Up until a month ago, I had never posted a blog, let alone a video blog, anywhere on the internet. I had been lurking around on YouTube for a while, checking out old segments of Sesame Street that I'd remembered from when I was 5, or checking out old Jon Stewart shows that I'd missed. But it wasn't until I saw something soliciting for questions for the CNN YouTube debates that I was motivated to pick up my camera. I was inspired to ask a question about energy consumption because I'm sick of the typical media and political spin on the energy issue, which creates always a panacea solution for us like wind, solar, energy, when in reality, if we don't decrease our consumption, none of those solutions will matter. So I picked up my camera, I headed to my bathroom, and I asked a question.
How is the United States going to decrease its energy consumption in the first place? In other words, how will your policies influence Americans rather than just using special light bulbs to do this?
Little did I know that of all the 3,000 questions submitted, mine was going to be one of the 39 that aired on CNN. But first, I'd like to talk a little about the main thing with which I was concerned in this whole process, which is how the questions would be selected in the first place. The whole point of YouTube is that it's a free-for-all. And the whole point of submitting the questions was that all of us could view each other's questions and vote on them, and yet YouTube was disabling that normal ability that we're all used to. Then I got an email from a YouTube user who had taken the initiative to set up a homepage called Community Counts, where anyone could vote for whether they thought a particular question could be asked, whether they were a YouTube user or not. I thought this was a fantastic solution, and I was curious to see whether CNN would pick up on it, or let alone use some of the information from it. So I tuned in to the CNN YouTube debate pre-show that was hosted by CNN, and waited with bated breath for any moment where they might tell us how our questions were being selected. During an interview with Anderson Cooper, he did bring up this process, showing us video of a room at CNN where about 6 people were tirelessly working to select videos. There was only one woman in this group of people, and Anderson revealed nothing about their selection criteria. When asked about whether or not there was any sort of democratic website where anyone could vote for these questions, Anderson said that he was aware of some such site, and yet the top question voted for there was something about whether or not Arnold Schwarzenegger was a cyborg. In other words, CNN doesn't believe in democracy. Anderson's cooking up a scenario here where if the selection of these questions were left to the masses, we would have a whole debate about cyborgs. So thank goodness CNN is at the helm of this whole thing, because who knows what chaos would ensue if the general public were actually allowed to choose media content. After having watched the pre-show and being so infuriated by Anderson's disregard of the democratic process that had been set up on the internet, I decided to document my discontent in video form and posted another video to my channel on YouTube. Of the top 30 voted for questions on David Colaruso's Democratic voting page, where anyone can vote for a question to be answered tonight, 6 out of the top 30 questions are about impeachment. The number 1 question on that site is about impeachment. I have a prediction that there will be no questions tonight about impeaching either George Bush or Dick Cheney, and that concerns me. So now it's the big day, and I cozy up on my couch to watch the debates. Lo and behold, about an hour in, there's my question. I had barely recovered from my screaming and jumping around to hear Senator Dodd's attempt to answer my question, and then proceeded to just float through the rest of the debate, staring at the screen and realizing that Democratic candidates had actually been responding to a question that I had posed. I was on a cloud. So I recorded a video response, posted it on my channel, in which I was extremely jubilant, to say the least. I'm still getting over my excitement, obviously. Then came the unexpected media coverage. I did an interview for the Huffington Post. My best friend actually heard an excerpt of me screaming from my video that I'd recorded on NPR. And I read Jennifer Posner's blog post covering the debates and specifically analyzing my question and the answer it had been given. Until that point, I was so thrilled to have simply been able to ask a question that I haven't fully processed that my question was never fully answered. And in turn, that, as Jennifer pointed out, and as I watched the footage again, I realized Anderson Cooper reframed my question twice, making it impossible for the candidates to answer it. Immediately after my question was asked, Anderson Cooper said,
Senator Gravel, how do you get Americans to conserve?
Which immediately shifted the question from being about a collective solution in terms of policy to how can individual Americans do something different. Then Gravel and Dodd attempted to answer the policy question. Anderson actually interrupted them and said, no, the question was about personal sacrifice. Again, way off the mark and completely destroying the integrity of my question. Once I had come down from my cloud enough to realize what Anderson had done with my question and the impact that that had had on the candidate's answering of my question, I was more interested in the fact that it had taken me a full day to realize that my question had not been answered. Of all people, I would think I would be critical about this whole process because I make documentary films. I also record web videos for social justice-minded nonprofits to convey their mission and their message in video form. And I've been a long champion of independent media and critic of corporate media. So I would figure that this is something I would definitely pick up on. So I think that it's particularly telling that just seeing myself on the screen on CNN posing a question was enough to get me excited and completely lose my critical eye for the whole process and realize that, wait a minute, I am being let in, but only to a degree. I'm being let in enough to start a discussion, which then CNN and Anderson Cooper get to tweak in whatever direction they would like, not to mention the fact that a presidential candidate can place whatever spin on the question they want in order to answer the question they wish I would have asked. The aspect of the debates that I was openly critical about, even amidst my celebration, was the fact that the vast majority of the questions I saw were asked by men. I double-checked these figures and found that of the 39 questions selected by CNN, 11 of those were asked by women. I also ran across a page that a YouTube user had posted where he analyzed all of the questions up to the point that about 2,200 had been asked. He found that of those 2,200, about 550 had been asked by women. That means that of the questions submitted, a little over 23% were submitted by women at that point. But that doesn't let CNN off the hook, because obviously, out of 3,000 questions asked, the producers at CNN can certainly reflect a gender balance in the questions and find 20 by women and 20 by men. That said, I wish there had been more women who had submitted videos to the debates. And I've also found that on YouTube there are not as many women political video bloggers that I would expect. So I'd love it if you would add your voice to this discussion. It's a relatively easy thing to do. All you need is a computer and a way to record digital video. And if you don't have either of those things, I'm sure that there's an independent media center or a cable access television station in your area that would be happy to help. You can also always email me because I would love to get you started. The thing I'd hope that you'd take away from this is that you can have a huge impact on the media discussion with relatively little effort. I posted my very first video a month ago and have since seen it on CNN as a question posed to the Democratic presidential candidates. So it's not as difficult as you would think to add your own voice to the public debate that we're having about the presidential candidates right now, or any political topic. And you might end up influencing the debate in ways that you never imagined.